Luckey Impact Show here at the beautiful Montage.
Woo!
Beach. Yes, awesome. See, none of our shows have ever started off like that. That's like awesome. So really honored to be here. And Josh, thank you for hosting Channel Bakers. This is an epic inaugural Breakthrough Summit. I mean, this is going to be tough to beat for next year, but I'm so excited to have Palmer Luckey here, sitting right next to me. And Palmer, before we go into some of the crux of what you're doing, give us a little bit about your background. I mean, like how you got into this and starting like in your teens.
Oh man, I mean, it's pretty short. So when I was 19, I was living in a camper trailer and attending Cal State Long Beach. I had been experimenting with virtual reality technology as a hobby for some time. I figured out how to do some things that nobody had figured out how to do with virtual reality technology. Decided I was going to drop out of college and start a company. I didn't think I was dropping out at the time. I thought I was just taking a break because college will always be there, whether you need it or not. Mostly not. And I dropped out, started this company, and 18 months later, I sold to Facebook for about $3 billion. And it turns out I had been doing the right thing at the right time in the right way. So then I spent the next 4.5 years, moved up to Silicon Valley, grew that team from, I started out with just myself in my garage, but grew it out to about 1,400 people. And then my employment was terminated for reasons unrelated to performance or any wrongdoing.
Right. So going back to kind of how you started at the inception, you didn't necessarily start virtual reality, but you really brought it to life with Oculus.
Oh, VR's been around for a long time.
It's been around. But what was the inflection point with Oculus that really brought the industry to life? What did you do that was different?
Well, a lot of it was the things that I didn't do. So computers got a lot better. So you could render reasonably high fidelity, three-dimensional worlds at a high enough frame rate on home computers rather than supercomputers. Display technology finally advanced to the point where you had enough pixels per inch so that you could make a reasonably good virtual reality headset. The key insight that I had was, there were a few, but I'd say the biggest one that I had was that you could, rather than building an optical stack that would take a perfect rectangle and then project a perfect rectangle at the other side, which often takes a complex, expensive, heavy optical stack, which is how everyone else has been doing it. Building these headsets that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, were very, very large, very, very heavy. I figured out that you could just build an optic stack that would be optimized around the things that could only be solved in optical hardware, and then solving all of the other more common aberrations, geometric aberration, chromatic aberration. You could just solve all those in real time in software on a GPU in a shader that was part of the game. So basically figuring out how to render a image in a game, distort it in such a way that when it comes through the lens, it is undistorted back to its original form. And this wasn't a new idea. People had thought of this idea before, but nobody had figured out how to do it in real time, 90 times a second without adding additional latency to the system.
So, you've got some brilliant marketers in the room. Can you tell us a little bit about the Kickstarter experience? Why yours seemed to attract this micro demographic of followers in the gaming industry, and how you were able to raise that much money so fast, and how you turn that into a business?
So I mean, it seems small now given a lot of the success that people have had on Kickstarter, but at the time we were one of the top 10 largest Kickstarters ever. We raised $2.4 million on Kickstarter. It sounds like a lot of money, but we actually ended up losing money on all of our Kickstarter customers. It turns out it's expensive to run a campaign, it's expensive to go around and market, it's expensive to do the video. But where we really saw the value was as a tool to connect with people and allow people to feel like they had a stake in what we were doing that was beyond just a normal consumer. You go and you buy a thermostat at Best Buy, you probably don't really care about it. You certainly don't feel part of that company. You probably don't even remember what the name of the company that made your thermostat is, unless it's Nest, because those are very cool. But if it's anything else, you probably don't even remember. But when somebody feels like they're part of making something happen, and when like they're helping you make it happen, even if they're actually losing you money, they don't feel like that. Perception is reality when it comes to marketing stuff.
And looking at virtual reality, obviously there's a gaming vertical, but looking at the B2B sector, do you forecast that this industry is going to continue to grow among different vertical SIC codes, or has it hit a shelf life? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't even know what an SIC code is.
Oh, like an industry code.
Oh,
like healthcare.
Okay.
Financial services.
Now, I see. Yeah. It absolutely is, and I think that virtual reality is one of those interesting things where we were at the hardest end of it. We were trying to sell to consumers, and when you sell to consumers, you have to convince people one at a time that they should buy your thing, that they should care about your thing. You might have a 5-second text ad scrolling by to do that. You might have 30 seconds on a television spot to do that. But it's really hard to convince somebody that they should modify their lifestyle, spend money, and that they really need something. And you have to do it for every single customer. Compare that with enterprise, where if you can find the right person and you can convince them that they could save time or money or risk using your product. And if they're actually convinced of that, then they are often fiscally negligent if they do not buy your product. And I love being in a position where if you have a product where you can prove that it's going to help somebody, whether it's training people to do something more safely than their current solution, or making a CAD designer more effective than they were otherwise, you can prove that they'll be 50% better. No business is going to say, "Oh, sounds great, but I don't want to make 50% more money."
Right.
And so that's one of the things that I really like about enterprise. And the reason you've seen enterprise adopt VR so quickly is because you only have to convince that handful of people whose job it is to find out how they can be better, rather than consumers who. The consumers are not out to make their lives better actively. They're waiting for whatever comes next to be shoved in front of them.
And I know on the consumer side, you were at CES this year. What did you
I'm there
see
every year.
What was it about this year that was so compelling to you?
Well, I've been at CES for 11 years now, which doesn't sound that long, but I'm only 27 years old. So I've been going to CES since before I was allowed to go to CES. You have to be 18, and I was there when I was 16.
Okay.
You just show up with a business card. Are you 18? Yeah. So what was really good this year? This year actually wasn't all that great, honestly.
Really?
There have been way better years. Like I remember when drone technology was really first coming into its own. It was mind blowing, and everyone was at CES. Not just the companies that are around today, but the 100 companies that failed. And it's really fun to watch that explosion at the start of an industry where everyone has 1,000 ideas. And you don't even know which ones are going to work. I think you saw a similar thing when VR and AR was kind of newer on the scene. You had not just the companies that survived to today, you had 100 other companies that were doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Like I'd say, like one of my favorite examples of this is there was a company in the early days, kind of the VR explosion, and they had figured out how to make an AR headset. And what it was a display up here and then a half silvered mirror like this. And the focus adjustment for the display was done by a special lens. And the problem is you take a normal magnifier lens, you put it in front of your eyes, and it's also going to ruin the world. So what they did is they actually had a lens that was shaped into pizza slices of magnifying, non-magnifying, magnifying, non-magnifying. And then they spun the lens in a hub motor at about 5,000 RPM. And so there's a spinning lens the size of a silver dollar right in front of your eye. And it produces this effect where you get the focus image from the display and you're able to see through. And that's the type of thing that I love seeing at CES. You don't see anywhere else. It was a terrible idea, but they did a great job of building it. And I think they couldn't realize how terrible it was. And look, it was a bunch of techno heads like me, computer boys. And they were like, "Oh, this is going to be so good." And they put on the head of the journalists. They say, people don't want a buzzsaw right in front of their eyes. And you only find that out when you get in front of the normal people and the real people. So I love being at CES, seeing the things that the real people will never buy.
Now take us through the narrative. I mean, here you've done an incredible thing with Oculus and got acquired by Facebook. You've achieved success at such margin, but yet you were just getting started. How did you go from virtual reality to Anduril, which machine learning AI for military applications? Can you take us through that transition?
Well, people often ask me to draw a line between virtual reality and artificial intelligence, and they suspect that there's some kind of philosophical argument like, well, you see, they're really two sides of the same coin. But that isn't true at all. There's nothing like that. They're completely different, and I knew almost nothing about AI when I started my business. What happened when I left Oculus is I decided that I wanted to use the money that I had made, the influence that I had gained to do something that wasn't going to be done if other people didn't do it. And I realized that for the first time in US history, we were in a place where a lot of U.S. technology companies were refusing to work with the DoD. It's truly unique in history to have the most innovative technology companies in the United States pulling away from the Department of Defense and saying, we are not going to give you anything that we don't also give to all of the strategic adversaries of the U.S. and its allies. And then at the same time, I looked at the military industrial defense complex and realized that it's incredibly inefficient. They don't have the best talent. They don't have the best incentives. Nobody believes that Raytheon or Boeing are going to lead us into the future of artificial intelligence. And so I said, okay, I want to start a company that can help with national security problems. What are the problems that are not going to get solved by the companies that are working on these? And it was very clear that mostly in the areas of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and sensor fusion, nobody was doing anything that was really good. So I said, that's what I'm going to work on. I'm going to become an expert in that. I'm going to just go at that, and I'm sure that I can make it work. And we luckily have been pretty successful. This was not a good strategy going in. It was a long shot strategy. I figured that I could afford to fail well.
And can you walk us through a little bit? I believe the platform's called Max, right? Can you take us through that?
Well, the short version of a long description is our core product is Lattice. It's an artificial intelligence sensor fusion network that can take data from thousands of different sensors and fuse it in real time into a large-scale three-dimensional model, a very large area. So feeding data from drones, from space assets, from ground assets, all into one model where everything is tagged with metadata, all the people, all the vehicles, all the cars, so that you can have perfect awareness of what's going on in the battle space. You basically need this shared picture so that all the people and all the robots can all be sharing one common idea of what's going on. Because if you can't even agree on what's happening, you certainly aren't going to agree on what you should be doing.
And for what applications can that be used for that you can discuss?
We do a lot of work with the US DoD on military base security, so we're deployed all over the world on a variety of military bases. We do a lot of work with US Customs and Border Protection. We do work with US allies like the UK Royal Marines, also on base security and expeditionary operations. We've been going through combat validations of our counter drone system, which basically takes the data of tracked drones from Lattice and then knocks them out of the sky using our interceptor drones. That's been going really well with a lot of different customers, and there's all kinds of applications. Anytime that you want to know everything that's going on in an area, you would want to know where every person is, where every vehicle is, so you can know where the good guys are, know where the bad guys are, and make sure you never get the two mixed up. You're going to want Lattice.
When you look at armed forces and the training of the platform and all these products that you're producing for the military and our allies, what sort of training does Anduril, do they get involved, or is there sort of like a third party involved? How does that work? Because I would think that would be a part of this.
It is. So the US military helps us train our algorithms, so helps us train our artificial intelligence systems by allowing us to participate in exercises and collect data about what things look like, how they move, and what they're doing. And we also do a lot of work the other way, where we train them how to best use our systems and how to apply them to the problems they have. Like I said earlier, I'm just a computer boy. I don't know anything about fighting,
right.
But I do know how to listen to people who understand these problems. And when they come to me with their problems, I trust that they know what their problem is. And I also trust that they probably do not know the full spectrum of technology that is able to solve that problem. And that's where me and my team come in.
Right. And then how do you see, just looking at AI and machine learning, do you see growth in both of these industries, and where do you see that taking place in shape in the next 5 to 10 years?
I don't know for a lot of industries. I do know that, there's obviously going to be an enormous amount of growth. There's so much economic opportunity to be created by artificial intelligence that it's hard to believe that it is, even if it could only do 10% of the things that people talk about it doing, that's still a huge economic boom. I think that you're going to see the biggest gains not on necessarily replacing people, but being able to do things that people would never be able to do. Right. Everyone's talking about AI replacing people. I think that's the way less interesting part of the conversation. And I also personally, I think we've discussed this before,
sure.
I think a lot of people, watch, I'm gonna do a test. All right, you think about artificial intelligence taking jobs. What job is it going to take, everybody? Just someone say, what job is it gonna take?
Manual labor.
Manual labor, any others?
Truck driver.
There we go. That's the one I was looking for. So he's the only guy that made my point. Everybody says, they say, oh, the truck drivers. It's going to take away the truck drivers. And it's like this political talking point. It's this media talking point. And in my opinion, it's a pretty elitist idea where they say, oh, the poor dumb truck drivers. What are they going to do when they have their job taken away by the artificial intelligence? They won't have any other way to make money. So we have to take care of them. I know a lot of truck drivers. And most of them are really stoked about AI for trucking for two reasons. One, because most truck drivers end up being truck fleet operators. That's generally where you start out independent, you get some people under you, you get a few trucks under you. So most of these truckers are stoked. They're like, oh, this is great. I'm gonna run an autonomous fleet. I can't wait to do this. Right. And the other side is most truckers, they don't see themselves as, they don't see their skill as driving a truck. Their skill is being a small business operator, doing business development, doing marketing, doing interfacing with their customers and with the people that they're delivering to. And that's not going to change anytime soon. So right. I think that AI is going to replace the jobs that honestly most people don't see as their biggest skill. There's not a lot of jobs it's going to replace where people are that unhappy about it. Truck drivers are included, manual labor is included. I don't think there's that many people that say my skill is manual labor. I'm very, very good with a shovel. And if we make some auto shovels that dig the ditches, it'll probably be okay. And I bet the ditch digger guy he's gonna be just fine, and he's gonna have something else he can do. Sorry, I rambled on there.
No, this is good.
Yeah, I'm a fundamentally a tech optimist.
Right.
I do not have a dystopian view. I do not have a cynical view. That's why I don't like the television program Black Mirror, because it makes everybody lose their minds and think that the world's gonna end from technology.
Right.
And you look at the old old school science fiction view of like old school Star Trek,
Yeah.
that's where I think things are more going, where everyone is better off, where the world is better off, and we're doing things that are only possible because of technology.
So, I mean, obviously you've attracted some amazing people on your board. Why did you pick Orange County, which is the place where I grew my business and I absolutely love as much as you? Tell me about Orange County as the place for Anduril, because I think that's so important, not just for this region, because I look at Anduril not as a business, but as an industry. And there's going to be other businesses formed around you, professional services as well as manufacturers. Can you talk a little bit about this region and why you picked Orange County?
I like Orange County, and I do not like Silicon Valley. I'd say the best way to sell Orange County is to talk about the things that are here. Like, you're a few minutes from the beach, you're a few minutes from Disneyland, you've got good infrastructure, better infrastructure than LA with a fraction of the population load. It's a clean place. We've got lots of good schools. We've got reasonable housing prices in the context of California coastal cities. But my favorite way to pitch Orange County to people is to pitch the other options. To say, well, let's look at the Bay Area, where everything's way more expensive, where everything's crazy, where the regulatory environment is nuts, and the local taxes. San Francisco has a 3% tax just for San Francisco. Orange County is just so much better than there. And I got really good at moving people down here when I was running Oculus. We didn't just hire locally, we imported people from all over the country to Orange County. Orange County is a place where you can convince people to move. And if you are in the Bay Area, you are only going to be able to hire Bay Area people, because people who aren't in the Bay Area probably don't want to be in the Bay Area. When I was in the Bay Area, I couldn't hire people from the middle of the country. I couldn't hire people from Austin. They all had their own opinions about the Bay. They didn't want to be there. But Orange County is a place where I can go to people from New York, from Seattle, from Austin, from Iowa, from Ohio, and I can convince them to move here because it's so great. So that's what's been helpful for me. It's like a great fishing lure to lure the people from all over the country to our fun little spot by the sea.
And I think you've done a really good job attracting some great talent too, away from some of these large traditional tech companies that are looking to do something with their intelligence for a nation and work for a company that is a startup already worth an incredible value. Can you talk a little bit about your hiring, recruitment, and some of the variables you put out there from an HR perspective?
I don't care about college degrees because that would be hypocritical. I don't really care as much about what people even do I care about what people do professionally. I care about the experience they have. The number one thing that I look at when I'm hiring somebody is what they do outside of the workplace and outside of their government mandated schooling. So like high school projects, I almost entirely discount. School projects, I almost entirely discount. I say, what do you do when you weren't being forced to do it for a grade? What drives you when you're just doing it only for yourself? And sometimes that's people who build, who forge replica swords using only 15th century medieval techniques.
Right.
Nothing to do with school, nothing to do with work, but clearly this is a guy who likes to do things just because he likes to do things.
Right.
And that guy's hired.
Right.
Someone who's out there doing really cool drone technology, working on cool sensors for drones, not because he's paid to, not because it's part of his schooling, but because he wanted to do it,
right.
That guy's hired.
Right.
So that's what I look for when I hire people. It's not the only factor. They need to have abilities. It's probably a good idea if you're hiring a structural engineer to hire one who has a background in structural analysis,
right.
No matter how good his sword collection is. But that's not the thing that gets me to make the offer.
Sure. And Palmer, can you tell me a little bit about Anduril? What does it mean? Where'd you come up with that name?
I didn't come up with it. Anduril is the name, or Anduril is the name of Aragorn's sword from Lord of the Rings. It is the shards of Narsil reforged, and in Elven it translates to the flame of the West. And that's kind of when I started the company, what I wanted to be. I wanted to start a company that was unapologetically defending the United States and its Western allies and the values that we hold dear, like democracy, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, that a lot of other places around the world do not have, or they have it and take it for granted. And I wanted the company to reflect that so that people understand what we're doing right from the first time they see the name, if they're a Lord of the Rings fan. And otherwise it means nothing to anybody.
So I've got to know you personally as well. Let's talk a little bit about Palmer on the personal side. You had a magnificent wedding on July 4th, which was such a great day. The fireworks show I'll never forget, and it was a great Gatsby theme, unbelievable. I felt like a majority of your friends are from Japan. Can you tell us a little bit of your affection and my wife is Japanese, so like it all was awesome, you know, for us. And I'm just curious, like, what's your affection with Japan? Why do you go back there? What's going on there?
You may be slightly exaggerating.
Okay.
I actually, out of the 500 or 600 guests, about 100 were Japanese.
Okay. Maybe the table I was at. Okay.
That might have been it. You might have been at one of the Japanese tables.
Right.
So I have friends all over the world, but one of the interesting things about Japan is I started spending a lot of time there when I was at Oculus. So we had there were game developers that were based in Japan that we worked with. There were component vendors and suppliers and manufacturers we worked with that were in Japan. And there are so many people over there that have a strong affinity for cutting edge technology. And I know that sounds stereotypical, but it's absolutely true. There's no place in the United States that's like the Akiba region or the Akihabara region where you just have tons and like imagine a city the size of like Huntington Beach, but every single store is an electronics store.
Right.
Like you don't have a thing like that here in the United States.
Right.
They have enough people that they can sustain a place like that and all the businesses that are around it. And I just made a lot of friends over there. I still go over there regularly. I still hang out with people. I also found that they really like my larger than life personality. And so every time I go to Japan, I get invited to do really cool things.
Nice.
So I can't help but like it there. I'm headed there in May. So I'm pretty stoked about that.
And so when I get to hang out with Palmer when you're in your casual clothes, like cargo shorts and a Hawaiian shirt with mismatching flip-flops, if you look closely.
No, they're matching today.
Are they?
Yeah, both black. Both black.
That one looks brown. Okay. He was.
No, you're right.
I hadn't seen you mismatches. So what does Palmer like to do when he's not working, if that's ever a moment? Like when you really have just chill time with your wife, you're just hanging out, what do you like to do?
I like to play video games. I am addicted to video games. That is the thing that prompts the greatest dopamine release for me.
Nice.
And it's an addiction that I manage every day and every week and will for the rest of my life. And I was not consciously aware of it. I would just descend into doing nothing except playing virtual reality video games.
Okay.
It's very easy for me to accidentally do that.
So you're in a VR environment playing most of the time. What are you sitting in? What type of chair are you in?
Most of the VR games I play are standing VR games, so I'm getting at least some small amount of exercise. my muscles will not atrophy as I melt into my chair.
Awesome.
But this is the reason I'm so honest about it is because kids often ask me like, "What advice do you give me?" And I say, "Manage your video game addiction." Because especially if you don't have to achieve a lot of success to do nothing but play video games. Like you're like, "Wow, Palmer, you made so much money. You could just play games all day." I'm like, yeah, but it wouldn't be that hard for you to make enough money to just play video games all day either. Like, it does not take a lot of money to sit in a small room and play video games and drink Mountain Dew. I tell people that they need to manage this addiction before they achieve success.
Right.
Because I do have friends who have achieved success and now they don't do anything except play video games and their lives are much worse for it.
So before I hand it over to Josh to facilitate some Q&A, what advice would you have? I mean, we've got thousands of IMA members, and just for the next generation, especially to achieve entrepreneurship, maybe not to your measured level with the equity in the businesses, but just to be a successful entrepreneur. What sort of advice do you have for folks?
Next generation meaning like children or we're very young.
I know that's true. Like I'm thinking like people in their 20s right now.
Okay. I guess a few pieces of advice. One, you should take a break from school as soon as you have a better idea than school. It can't be that hard. Two, you should always immediately hire the people who are good at the things that you're bad at, and then immediately hire the people who are good at the things that you are good at. The job of any competent executive should be to make yourself obsolete. You start a technology company because you want to work with technology, right? That actually isn't fair to your employees or to your investors or to your customers to hold on to that with a really tight grip. I would love to be doing board layout and optics design in my company. It's what I enjoy doing.
Right.
But we have people in my company who are much better at it than me. And if I was the best person in the company, then I've been negligent in my hiring. And that's not something to be celebrated. I see a lot of people say, "Oh my God, he does it all. He's the God boy king engineer who runs the whole company." And I say, great, now you have a company that's dependent all on one guy, and he's worse than the people that you could hire because he wants to hold on to the thing that he likes doing. You can't hold on to the thing you like doing. You have to give it up, and your life has to suck for a while. That's just the way that it is.
Right.
You know, I didn't start a company because I want to spend my time fundraising or selling to the government, but that's what I should be doing because I can hire people to do everything else better. And it's just one of those tough realities.
Let's take a hit off what you just said there. Like, your life's going to suck for a while. That pain, that adversity that you feel when you're running a business, whether you're at an enterprise or you're starting your own business, how did you overcome your adversaries, people just saying, hey, it's going to fail, those roadblocks that you hit? Because a lot of people just give up and go in a different direction. What made you and what drove you through that transition?
Hiring all the right people who understood how to get around the things that I did not understand at all. There were so many times that our business could have been absolutely destroyed, and I made sure I hired the right people to handle legal and compliance, human resources, accounting compliance. As they say, the generally accepted accounting principles.
Right.
You know, it turns out that it's really important to hire people who are experts in those things, or your company is going to fall over.
Right.
When I talk about life sucking for a while, what I mean is you start a company, you start a tech company, you get to work on tech for a while. Because at the beginning, everybody wears a lot of hats. That is a lot of fun. And then you go through the period where you need to start hiring more and more people. You need to scale up, and you need to start focusing on the things that you should be doing, not the things you want to do.
Right.
That's the part that sucks.
Right.
And then eventually, after your company has succeeded, and after it's at a point where you can afford to do things that may not be the optimal financial decision, then you can start to do more things you like again. You know, if you can get to the point where you have made yourself truly obsolete at everything,
right,
then that frees you up to go back into doing more speculative things. And like, that's where I was in my final years at Oculus.
Right.
I was in a place where we had a very large team. We hired people who were better than me at everything that I could possibly want to do. I said, okay, I need to go find new things that nobody's doing, and I need to learn how to do those.
Right.
And then I would have eventually had to find people who were better than me at doing those things, and the cycle would have repeated itself. But
awesome.
you know, I'm currently, if you guys can't tell, I'm living in the cycle where it kind of sucks.
Right.
But it's great, and I'm going to make everybody at my company so much money. And I just have to remember that when I wake up in the morning.
And Palmer, I've had the opportunity to sit in front of incredible thought leaders around the world, and you are one of a kind. And I'm so thankful for your time. You're being pulled in so many different directions.
My friends and my enemies describe me that way.
Okay.
One of a kind.
I'm definitely on the friend side.
They say there's nobody like him. There's nobody who does the terrible things he would do.
Right. Well, know that we love you here in Orange County. We're very grateful for your time. So what we're going to do now is transition. I just want to say, Marty O'Connor, who's in the back there, you know, he's the one who was on my first episode of Impact Show, facing adversity, as he says, adversity to advantage, in his documentary called Relentless. Marty went to Chapman University with me. I know one of our guests, he has a daughter going to Chapman. It's a small world here in Orange County, so we all help each other. Marty's got a very successful film company that I hired to do these shows, so it all comes around. We're grateful to have you here, Marty, and continued success with your documentary. And Palmer, thank you very much again for being on my 5th episode of Impact Show. And now we're going to transition over to Josh.